Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Hello, folks, and welcome back to ProAm Predictions. As always, I am Paul O'D, and I am the amateur side. And I am joined on the professional side, as always, by Mr. Brian Moore, the Pike Man. How are you doing today, Brian?
I'm happy, Paul. I'm on a win streak now. Since last week, we have after picking it up, but you're still lagging behind. So I'm happy. How are you?
I wouldn't be getting too carried away. We're both on 9 and 12 overall. You did have a good week last week, I'll give you that. But it's
you're only as good as your last performance, Paul. Note that.
We do still have a lot of work to get back to where we want to be. I did want to touch on something with you quickly. The Bellator have announced, and Scott Coker announced, that they're going to be doing rankings for Bellator, and there's going to be 20 media sources that are going to be putting up rankings and creating rankings for Bellator, just so there's more transparency when they're making fights. You must be buzzing by this, and just so that people can see where you are in that bantamweight division.
This is first news that I've heard of it. I did not hear this, so I'm kind of surprised, but I'm happy with it because for a couple of reasons. Number one, I know people are just doing their best. Some of the journalists are putting out these rankings, but some of them are fucking crazy. And secondly, it just gives us a bit more of a goal and an idea. You know, for instance, like there are some absolute killers in each division, and they're not ranked, so it's hard to know, who they compare against. So it'll be easier for fans to understand about matchmaking as well. So that's interesting. That'll add to it for sure.
Yeah, and I seen that Vieira MMA put up a post that they declined to be in the pool to create the rankings, which just struck me as very strange to not have an Irish MMA kind of journalistic presence in it, especially given our Irish representation in Bellator. What do you make of that? Is it kind of a strange move from them, or is something that they don't normally get involved with?
I don't know. I can't speak for Severe, but perhaps maybe it's just you're opening yourself up for criticism, if that's the sense. I don't think they'd be too bothered with that, though. I don't know, they speak their mind. You know what I mean? I like the guys there, but yeah, I'm kind of surprised they didn't put their hat in the pool for that. You know what I mean? Or because I thought or their name in the hat, should I say, for that? Because it would have been nice for not just say Irish, but from a European perspective to have those, because sometimes US, they can kind of get a bit obsessed with just their US fighters and not really focus on the Euro side of it. So
that was my concern as well, because they were actually offered it. They were reached out to for it, but declined. And I believe their reasoning, just to give a fair kind of overview of it, was they said that some of the major media outlets weren't involved in it, so they were going to stay away from it. Which it just struck me as a bit strange, and I'm sure they have their own reasoning, but it would have been nice, as you say, for European MMA to have that input as well.
Is there any obvious MMA media outlets or sources that aren't involved?
I didn't see any others that made comment on it. Although Luke Thomas did say that he wasn't asked. That's all I saw.
But he was involved in the presser dinner night, wasn't he?
Yeah. So maybe they're saying that it's different. He's always impartial, but I don't know. Strange one.
But besides that, I think it's a positive thing. Of course, they're going to be criticized. That's every ranking system that has been criticized.
Of course.
But I think it'll be great for the promotion. I think it'll be great for Bellator. It'll be for fans that maybe are focused on US, or maybe on this side of the pond are just focused on Europe. It'll just maybe bring that bring it together a little bit better and easier to match fights and look forward to fights more as a result.
Of course, and like they said, it's for the fans' perspective, it's more transparency when they are making fights, that people can see why they're putting these fights together. So it makes perfect sense. But it's definitely a positive move from Bellator.
And did they give a timeline?
They said it'll be this year. That's all. They didn't give a timeline for definite.
Vague.
But I'm sure it will be together quite soon.
Yeah, that's cool.
But we need to get into some fights for this weekend. You have UFC Vegas 19, Curtis Blaydes versus Derrick Lewis, and there's a kind of a heavy lean towards the heavyweights in this card, especially on the main card that we're going to try and give our predictions on. Now, obviously, our predictions aren't going great, but I'm feeling a little bit more confident. I'm, fe- I'm feeling a
If
little
you
bit
bet
more
on my
confident.
stuff, if you had my bet last week, you're making money. That's
I
the main
mean,
thing.
it was 11-10. Settle down now. Settle down.
Well, this week is safer.
Okay. Safer than 11-10.
Yeah, this could be. I think this could be evens.
You're
We'll
trying to
see.
you're trying to claw back those losings by the pennies.
Yup.
Very good. So look, we'll get started with the main event because this is one I've been excited for quite a while. You have Curtis Blaydes
Yeah.
obviously and Derrick Lewis, both guys on win streaks in a heavyweight division. The only downside to this fight is that there's no. If this fight was pre John Jones moving to heavyweight, it would be clear that this is for the number one contender fight. But I don't think that's the case. I would hope that whoever wins this fight has the sense to sit out and wait for a title fight. But you just don't know at heavyweight, and it's a killer's row up there. It's a difficult one. For me, it's obviously it's a style of striker versus grappler, but I think there's a little bit more in it than that, and I think Blaydes especially is getting a little bit too much stick. What do you like about this fight? I won't ask you for your pick straight away, but who you kind of leaning towards?
So you're not asking me for my pick, but you're asking me who I'm leaning towards.
Yeah, I'm trying to steal picks here already.
Yeah. Well, it's a great matchup. It's a very exciting fight. I'm actually impressed with the card itself. When you when you delve a little bit deeper into it, it is interesting. The matchups are great, and it's a great main event. Look, you got a guy, Derrick Lewis, who can turn your lights out at any stage of this fight. He's very dangerous. You've seen him against Volkov, and he was a fight that he was losing, a fight that he was very tired, and he was able to knock out. So Blaydes just can't get complacent at any stage. However, I do think Blaydes is far more well rounded. I think his fight IQ was higher too. So it's almost like a fighter versus an athlete, if that
Yeah,
kind of makes sense in a way.
definitely.
But yeah, very interesting fight. It was what's your take on it? You want to pick first? You want me to pick first?
I'll go first, seeing as I'm already after threatening to steal picks. I'll make it fair. I think you're bang on with the Lewis thing. I think Lewis, he's he's a hard one to read because yes, there's that explosive power, but he never really looks massively impressive, even though he's entertaining. But he does carry that power late on into the fight. Blaydes obviously has the takedowns advantage, most takedowns in heavyweight history. I believe it's 56, or it could be more. But some huge wins as well. His last four fights, you have Volkov, JDS. I'm not going to pronounce Abdurakhmov's name. I think I did it okay. And Justin Willis. Serious performances. And if you look at his only losses inside the UFC cage and only losses in his career, both to Ngannou.
Yeah.
So the power is definitely an issue for him, and I wouldn't say he's chinny by any means, but if he does get clipped, it could be lights out for Blaydes. But you're right, I think he has a little bit too much. I think his IQ is higher, fight IQ is higher, and I think Blaydes just out grapples him for 5 rounds.
You think Blaydes is 5 rounds?
Blaydes is my pick by decision. Yes.
Okay, I have Blaydes, but I think it'll come by TKO.
Ground and pound.
Yeah, but I think that he will wear on him. My thought on this fight is I think Blaydes will use his IQ, his fight IQ. I think he'll look to grapple and strike. I think he'll try and mix it in, so it's basically you'll have Derrick Lewis working as many different energy systems as possible in this fight and wearing on him. I think that he will take him down. I think I can see him landing some big heavy shots and eventually the referee having to step in. I don't know if Lewis can. I know he's dangerous at all stages of a fight, but I just don't think he'll be able to keep up with that pressure and being on the back foot and being on his back for that long. I think TKO maybe third, fourth round, but I'm going to pick Curtis Blaydes by TKO.
What do you make of of Lewis in the first 2 rounds? Because I have an opinion here that I can see Lewis just being quite happy to be on his back and holding a little bit. Because if he goes in with the attitude that he's going to try and get up every time he's taken down, he will gas out quick. I can see Lewis playing this quite smart and accepting the position on the bottom for the first 2 rounds at least.
I think it'd be foolish to do so. Blaydes is a better athlete, and again, we talk about that God-given power that Derrick Lewis has, and obviously he's accurate. He's able to put guys away, but I think Blaydes will be coming into a 5 round fight being very well conditioned for this.
Yeah,
You're talking about a guy who can grapple heavy, can strike heavy as well. I think that if if Lewis tries to kind of play that rope a dope style game of conceding the first couple of rounds, I think it's a terrible mistake on his half. I think
yeah,
he needs to try and put hands on Blaydes, keep that bit of a distance. But easier said than done, of course.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Blaydes comes in as a better athlete. Now, one of my rules is don't bet on heavyweights because
Yeah, yeah, and
anything can happen.
and that's what we're doing for most of this card as well.
Yes, and on top of that, he's the prime example of someone that can turn your lights off at any stage. That is Derrick Lewis. The
Yeah,
Volkov fight was amazing. Just on that alone, just going back to that, he was getting beat. Well, it looked like the end was close, and he just pulled it out of the bag, and that was late into the fight too. So
yeah,
could he do it again? Absolutely, absolutely. And we've seen Blaydes has been knocked out. Now he's been knocked out by a mutant, but it's he's there to be hit. But I
yeah,
think I think it's going to be brains versus brawn in this thing. Blaydes uses his head and he gets the victory.
yeah. No, I don't believe by any means that Lewis is going to go in there and just accept the first 2 rounds as defeat. But I just can't see him fighting to get back to his feet if he does get taken down. I think
Yeah.
he'll go out with the attitude that he's going to try and take his head off early. But if he does get
Mhm.
taken down, I can't see him fighting it too much to conserve some energy.
If he doesn't fight hard getting up, he needs to fight extremely hard in
Not
not
being
conceding a
taken down.
takedown.
Yeah,
100%. If you look at Adesanya, he's probably one of the best I've seen at fighting so hard not to concede a takedown. I know it sounds silly to even say you should fight hard. We should fight hard for every minute of every fight, but it's it's the difference about getting back into your comfort zone and being on the feet
yeah,
versus being on your back and taking punishment. So he does get tired, but he's got to pull it out of the bag in the sense of do not concede even a millimeter to get taken down. Yeah, if he gets taken down, maybe he should hold on and get a stand up because he's
yeah,
the
yeah.
more energy he exerts on the floor, the less his chances are of landing on the feet when it does get back there. If it does get back there,
Of course, and of course, we have seen Derrick Lewis get hurt before and still come back and win the fight. He's dangerous, as we said, going late.
yeah.
But we both have Blaydes in this one. It's quite interesting. We'll
Yeah, and
move.
one more thing, Paul. I just sorry before you do that. If you look at the Volkov fight, he got very tired in the Volkov fight, which
Yeah,
was pretty limited grappling exchanges. There was a lot of striking exchanges. Again, we talk about that's one energy system as such. That's one facet
hmm
of martial arts. But when you mix those styles and you mix the grappling and the striking exchanges, that's when it gets unbelievably exhausting.
yeah,
So you can expect probably him to look even more tired than he did in the Volkov fight. And then is it possible to get the knockout? I'm not sure.
yeah, yeah. That's true. Now he did put out a video. I don't know if you've seen it. The UFC released it about the new All American, which was Derrick Lewis. Derrick Lewis is one of the funniest guys in MMA, in my opinion. But he was basically saying that his whole game plan was to go out and take him down, and that Blade, obviously tongue in cheek, and that Blaydes had this one-touch knockout power and reversing roles a little bit. If you haven't seen it, go check out UFC
Yeah,
released it on Twitter,
absolutely.
but it's very, very funny. We do have to move on to the co-main event, of course. You have Caitlin Vieira versus Yana Kunitskaya. This is an interesting one for me because Kunitskaya has shown how resilient she is in her time in the
Mm,
UFC, and I think even though she got finished by Cyborg, a lot of people were impressed by her.
yeah.
Um, the concern I have for Kunitskaya, of course, is that when fighting in Invicta, she got subbed by Tanya Evinger, and that's Caitlin Vieira's world. I think Caitlin
Yeah.
Vieira is a nightmare for anyone on the ground. Her only loss being to Irene Aldana. Um, how do you see this fight going?
Yeah, I think it's Vieira's fight again, and yet we look at her being an outstanding grappler, but I just think she's more seasoned. Yes, um, she has less fights, but she has shown what she's worth in the UFC. She's had a lot of UFC fights, and she's shown her mettle in there. She's an outstanding grappler. She's physical, and I think that she's my big pick for this week. I just can't decide whether it's going to be a sub or a decision. Yeah, you know me and my pronunciations, Paul. You go for it. What's her opponent's name again?
Kunitskaya, Yana
There we
Kunitskaya.
go. That's it. I'm gonna say YK, okay? But like we'll go with her initials. Yeah, she's resilient. She is tough, So whether she can withstand our the submission attempts, and that's one thing. But I think Vieira will handle her. I think the again we look at her grappling. She is a better grappler, and I think that she'll put it.
Yeah.
She'll enforce her will in this fight. She'll stick to her game plan, and I can't decide whether it's going to be a sub or a decision. But Vieira for me all the way on this one.
No problem for me as well. It's 100% Vieira. Um, I think the telling factor here was the notable win she had over Sarah McMahon, and she did get the submission victory there. And we know the
Yes.
pedigree of McMahon's grappling. Maybe not
Yeah.
necessarily her jiu-jitsu, but her grappling overall. She's a tough girl to get out of there.
Yeah, and I'm glad you say grappling because people divide it, which they can, grappling, they can divide it by wrestling and jiu-jitsu. But if you have grappled since a very young age and the credentials that Sarah McCann has, an absolute world beater in the grappling world, and she knows her way around the mat. So to submit someone of her caliber was extremely impressive. And that's again one of the things that I'm looking at that I think that whether she will get the finish, I think she perhaps will. But if not, it could be a lot of control on the floor.
Yeah, and what do you make of Vieira going forward? Like she has to be a strong contender at this point. Do you see her fighting for a title? Do you see Nunes even coming back down to 35? She seems happy up at 45 at the moment. Because let's be fair, the bantamweight division in the women's is lacking contenders at the moment. They need to have someone with that kind of star power and that background that looks like they're going to test Nunes.
Yeah, I can't. Right, let's hypothetically say she wins this fight. It's not a even if she wins by a damn impressive fashion, it's not a big fight for Nunes to come back down to. Now she'll have to defend or vacate. But I think she's pretty happy at 145, Paul. She looks phenomenal there too. I think there's better fights for her, but bigger money fights, more entertaining fights, bigger legacy fights for her than to come back down to 135. But the 135 division, Vieira could come in and steal the number one contender spot here with a good victory. But whether she'll get a chance to actually fight Amanda, I'm not sure. I'm not sure because, like we said, the 145 is just it's where it's at really for Nunes.
Yeah, and of course you have Holly Holm and Jermaine Durandamy, both there at 35, who just seem to be swatting away contenders left, right, and centre, and make it very difficult for that division to become interesting again. I just hope that if they're going to bring Nunes back to 35, that they give a new contender a chance without having to go through Holm and Jermaine, because the division is dying a death at the moment. Like they made a huge mistake last year, and I've touched on this numerous times about Aldana, and there was another contender as well that GDR and Holm fought on the same card, and it kind of left the division very flat because obviously Nunes, they're the last two women Nunes has beat at 35, and of course she's beaten GDR twice now. So it's tough, and they do need to have new, fresh faces there at 35 to challenge her. I'd
like to see Holly have another crack. Sorry, I would like to see I think that Holly's overall game could be probably the most problematic matchup for Amanda. But like it kind of in a sense, then you have like Vieira here. Why not pit her against one of the number one contenders right now when Nunes is out for a minute? Why not give her a Holly Holm next? Maybe that's the way they're working towards. Now I'm discounting Yana now already, but like, which is kind of unfair, but it almost seems like, Vieira wins this. She should fight one of these guys, one of these girls. But whether she can match up against one of those, like a Holm or Durandamy, I'm not sure, but she has her hands full on the co-main event on Saturday, but I think she comes through I think she comes through pretty easy, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, and just for I do predict her to get a submission victory against Yana, just to clarify.
I'm going to pick sub as well.
Yeah. We do need to move on to the next one. You have Charles Rosa versus Derrick Minner. Very interesting fight here. Derrick Minner is a very experienced guy, but maybe a newbie of such in the UFC. Obviously, he had his debut, or he had 1-1 overall in the UFC. He had a latest win over TJ Laramie after the loss to Grant Dawson in his debut. But this guy came in with 34 fights. So he's not out of his depth in there by any means. He's very comfortable and looked comfortable in the 2 fights we've seen of him so far. And on the opposite side, you have Charles Rosa, Boston Strong. 4-4 in the UFC, and he's kind of trading wins and losses. He hasn't put 2 wins or 2 losses together yet to this point. They're both coming off a loss. Charles obviously looking to put 2 together. Derrick, kind of the new face there. Very, very interesting fight for me. I just think the experience in the UFC will be the deciding factor here. Like it's a funny one because Charles Rosa, obviously, he's only 17 fights compared to 36. It's half the experience inside the cage for Charles Rosa, but I do believe that UFC experience is the deciding factor.
Yeah, I always speak about how I would love to know how both of these camps went. You touched on both those points when it comes to experience phenomenally well. But you have Derrick Minor, who was 34 fights, obviously an active guy, and he, like you said, looked comfortable in the UFC. Now, if I know that Charles Rosa had a pretty smooth sailing camp, I'm picking him all day of the week.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pick him, but he's in the UFC a hell of a long time. When I think of Charles Rosa, I'm thinking of this in my back of my mind. I'm thinking of a young, well-rounded, hungry up-and-comer. This guy fought Dennis Seaver. I think he's 8 years in the UFC or something like that. Is he? Is he 8 years?
No, I don't think it's 8 years. Charles Rosa fought Dennis Seaver when Dennis Seaver was very much out the door, and that was his debut fight. Sorry. He's had 8 fights, yeah.
8 fights, but he's in the UFC a long, long time.
Yeah.
You know, and to only have that limited amount of fights as such, you know, he hasn't been the most active. Is he injury prone? That's the kind of the what's going on in my mind. Is he coming in fully prepared? I do think that he will take this fight. I'm hoping that he can start now putting wins together because he is talented. He's very talented. He's very well rounded. He's an entertaining guy. I like watching each of his fights, but I want him to get now momentum going. I think he's the perfect chance against Minor, who's well-rounded, who's experienced. I think that he can go out and he can put his full display on. I'm just hoping he's coming in fit. I hope he's coming in, you know, not carrying any injuries, not carrying any knocks, just ready to build on and build up some momentum this time around.
Yeah, look, the obvious the grappling edge here I would actually give to Minor is a lot of submission victories on his record. And Rosa, as good as he is in the exchange, I just don't think he has that killer instinct on the mat. But I think, like you said, Rosa is very well rounded. I think he has a clear advantage on the feet, and I think he's good enough to stay out of dangerous positions on the mat and to get back to his feet. So yeah, I'm going for Rosa, but I do think it'll be by decision.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm going to pick Rosa. I don't think that he puts him away. Yeah, he could. I think I'd give the advantage to him in the striking. I just give him the advantage as just being a more well-rounded fighter. But I think he plays it smart. I think he gets the decision.
Yeah, and then we're back to the heavyweights again. You have Alexei Oleinik versus Chris Daukaus, and this is one that I'm really looking forward to. I wouldn't have been shocked if this was the co-main event of the night. And actually, the other heavyweight fight, I don't know how that's not a co-main as well, to be honest. But we'll get to that. Alexei Oleinik's record, 59-14-1. It's absolutely phenomenal records to have in MMA. And he's going up against Chris Daukaus, who's 10-3, 13 fights.
Yeah.
It's almost 6 times the experience of Daukaus. Now, we kind of talked about this beforehand, and Oleinik's run in the UFC, and he's had some losses. He's 8-5 overall in the UFC. But the losses for me, like you've Derrick Lewis on that list, you have Blaydes on that list, you have Overeem on that list, Walt Harris when big ticket was big ticket, and his first loss was to Daniel Omielanchuk, and I butchered his name, but he does have huge wins. He wins over Hunt, Verdum. Chris Daukaus is obviously the unknown here, but he comes in with that huge KO power. For me in this one, I think Daukaus does get it done, even though Oleinik has a history of upsetting these big punching guys. I think Daukaus gets it done by finish as well, by KO, TKO.
I love this fight. I absolutely love this fight because you've got Oleinik, he's had these mixed results. He's shown himself to be great, but at the same time, then he's dropped fights that he's perhaps should have won on paper. And now you got Daukaus, who's coming off 3 knockouts in a row. He looked great, and he's fresh. You know, he only fought very recently, so I think it's a great fight. But I'm picking against you on this one. I'm going with Olenek on this. I'm just going with his experience. He's fighting a guy he's fighting a guy who's coming in, must be in incredible confidence going in with this, knocking three
Yeah,
guys out in a row. But I think Olenek is going to just use his experience against the guy that, yeah, he's going to be full of confidence, but he is lacking experience. And like you said, the 5 or 6 times the amount of fights, in their pro careers. I think Olenek, he's not the most enjoyable. Some of his fights can be so ugly, but
mm,
he can be very effective, and I think that he'll put it on Daukus, and I think that he'll eke out a decision in this one too. I think it'll be a bit. I think it will be a decision now. Daukus, I'd actually prefer for Chris Daukus to go ahead and get the knockout, make it 4 in a row, and let's see his star
some
climb.
hype.
But
Yeah,
yeah, because I don't think Olenek will ever challenge for a belt, and I think he's there to be in some entertaining fights, to win some, to lose some. I don't think
yeah.
he'll ever challenge for a belt. I think Daukus, you give him the right route, could upset a lot of big names, but I don't think he gets by Olenek in this.
Yeah, of course, the unknown here is Olenek's Ezekiel choke that he's famous for.
Yeah,
And the guy is just, he smothers you on the mat and he can finish you from literally anywhere. We've seen it already in the UFC where he got a victory when he was mounted himself. He managed to get a choke. And we haven't
witchcraft.
seen that side of Chris Daukus, whether he can handle that or not. So that is an interesting one. But
Yeah,
for me, Chris Daukus does have that, what they call, I believe, the one-hitter-quitter power. So I can see him getting it done. And we've seen Olenek in wars, and he has a chin. He can certainly hang
he is.
there, and he throws his hands with that disrespect almost, because he knows he can take the fight to the mat if he needs to. But
Yeah.
I think that style of fight plays into Daukus, and Daukus is able to put him away.
I would be more confident in Daukus if you look at his last 3 fights,
Yeah,
round one, round one. I would like to see a round 3 decision in there, just to see, does
yeah,
this guy have 3 rounds in his tank? You know
yeah,
what I mean? You're going to be fighting a guy like Olenek, who's not going to give you much on the feet, but he will be attempting takedowns. He might drag you to the ground. He put you to the fence. How does his gas tank hold up? And that's why I'm just going to go with Olenek on this. I think that he'll do more in all those exchanges, and possibly come up with the decision win.
yeah. And to your point, Chris Daukus has 10 wins and 9 by KO. I believe there's only one of them was in the third round. He's only gone to a decision once.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're going to move back to the light heavyweights for the next one. You have Phil Hawes versus Nasruddin Imavov, and this is another phenomenal fight. They're both on 9-2, both very similar records. Phil Hawes, of course, from Dana White Contender Series alum. Both guys are 1-0 in the UFC, and they're both on a hot win streak here. Phil Hawes has 5, Nasruddin has 6. And this one, I've said this a couple of weeks, and I've been right most times I've said it as well, by the way. I just want to point that out. I get a lot wrong on this show. But when I call a fight not going the distance, you can bet on it. This one will not go to the judges. Phil Hawes has never gone to the judges in his career in 11 fights. And Nasruddin's only gone twice, 1 win and 1 loss. But he has 3 KOs, 4 subs. These are guys that go in there and look to finish the fight early. For me, I just think Nasruddin has a more rounded game. He has that KO power, but he can also take you down and submit you. And he likes to take the fight down. I think he gets it done by submission or by TKO on the mat.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Hawes on this straight off the bat, and I think it will go to a decision. Funnily enough, and I just, not to play devil's advocate or just be a prick, but when you have guys, with this kind of I wouldn't say necessarily hype, but you're almost expecting, to finish, but you're with also similar records, similar career paths. I think they'll be a bit more cagey than they perhaps have been in previous fights, and
Yeah.
I think it's a very tight fight. It's a flip of a coin, as we spoke about earlier. But I'm going to go with Hawes on the decision with this one. I think it's an entertaining fight. I'm really excited to see, because they're in the 185 division. 185 division is on fire at the minute. It's cracking, so it's gonna be a good one to see who emerges victorious to move on, because there's so many good fights to make. But I'm going to go with Hawes on this.
And I'm going to call you on your decision here. And I want a friendly bet with you that this does not go to the decision. So will we say €1 that it doesn't go to the judges?
What are we talking? £1,
Yeah,
£2?
yeah, €1. We'll make it as friendly as possible. Responsible gambling and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the last fight on the card, and we touched on this already, is another heavyweight bout that could this could be a main event very
Yeah.
easily. You have Andrei Arlovsky, a legend, a former champion, been around forever, against the new up and coming light from UK MMA is Tom Aspinall. Aspinall 9-2, and the record doesn't kind of do justice because
No.
he's been around a while, and those in the UK know that this guy has been there for quite some time. He had a big enough amateur record, and he's been knocking people out forever. Andrei Arlovsky, 30-19. This will be his 50th MMA appearance. He
It
has
feels like it should be more, shouldn't it? Really,
Yeah.
been around that long.
Crazily enough, it does. Like most people, you think 50 fights, it just sounds phenomenal, but it feels like he's been around for longer than that. Yeah. Now, the one thing I will say, Arlovsky has 2 wins in his last 2. He's beat Tanner Boser, who was another big hitter and a contender, and he beat Philip Linz as well. But he's 5-8-1 in his last 14, and we have to look at the fact that Arlovsky has been knocked out 11 times in his career. And that is a concern going against the guy of Tom Aspinall's striking credentials. Aspinall has finished every opponent 8 KOs, 1 sub. I can't see it going any other way than an Aspinall KO.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think Arlovsky, he's a legend of the sport. He's been in with pretty much everyone. But I think Aspinall, he's he breaches a black belt and he's got phenomenal hands. I only found out recently that he was brought into Tyson Fury's camp.
Yeah.
So last time, I'm pretty sure for his last camp, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it was his last camp. He's trains with Darren Till on a regular basis. He's going to be very well versed in the striking department where Arlovsky's strengths lie. I don't think we're going to see grappling in it though, even though we've got a BJJ black belt and he's at a very good level too. But I think Aspinall, I think that he's on the crest of a wave in my opinion, and I think he's a bigger man, or he seems to be a more physical man than Arlovsky too, and I think that he gets the knockout. I think it's round 1 or 2 that he'll find his chin. I like Arlovsky, and I don't like we spoke about say his last 14 fights.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have these dips and
ebbs and flows.
Exactly, in his career, and he's just looked better in his like Mark Hunt. You could have discounted him many years ago. He had this big, a big turnaround, and I think it's the same, not as high level, but with Arlovsky, we've seen that a little bit too.
Yeah.
So I think to say 14 fights isn't a great representation of where he's at right now in his career.
Yeah, which
however, Aspinall,
he'd be 3-1 overall in his last 5. So yeah, it's true.
Yeah. But I think Aspinall, like I said, I think he's on a crest of a wave. I think we spoke about say this could be co-main event, main event. I think he puts Arlovsky away. Depending on how good COVID is to us, we could see Aspinall headline UK event later on in the year. I think he's like I said, I think they're going to push him hard because he is a talent and he's going to do a lot of damage in the UFC for sure, more damage.
Definitely, and for a lot of people in the know, and a lot of people around the UK and Ireland MMA scene, a lot of people are tipping Aspinall as the next British or UK or English world champion in the UFC. And I mean, you have to factor in there the fact that Darren Till is still about, and he's making waves at 185. But the heat seems to be on Aspinall right now.
Yeah. You see, again, it's the heavyweight. I wouldn't say anything can happen, but these are guys that with 4 ounce gloves, huge men. You got someone with that caliber, that skill level,
yeah,
and who's shown who's shown what he can do. It's hard to discount him, and it's hard to look past him being a contender.
For sure, yeah.
You look at the other Brits that are doing fantastic, such as Jerome Murphy, Nathaniel Wood. You could tip them to go on to be to UFC gold as well in time, but I think it's I wouldn't say it's an easier route. That's the wrong term to use, but I think you have more opportunities at heavyweight, in my opinion. I think Aspinall, especially like who he's surrounding himself with, his credentials, like I said, I think that when he beats Arlovsky, I cannot wait to see his next opponent.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, next week we do have heavyweight card again. we have Rosenstruck versus Gan is the main event next weekend. So we will be back next week with more picks for you. For this week, I've been Paul O'D and Brian Moore. Do you have any final says?
Are we doing our bets of the week?
Oh, bet of the week. Jesus Christ, completely forgot about it. Go on, you go. We're a little bit over time, but you go with your bet of the week.
Again, it's a pretty safe bet, and I'm going against my don't bet on heavyweight fights. I'm actually putting two in my triple. I'm going to go with Curtis Blaydes. I'm going to go with Vieira. I'm going to go with Aspinall. All to win.
Fair enough. Yeah, I can see that.
Now, if you want to put money on an underdog on this one, I think Eddie Wineland is a great shout. Now, it's not a massive. He's not a massive underdog by any means, but I think he'll bounce back in this one. I'm not putting him on my bet. I'm being safe this week until we get a bit more reputable, Paul. But my triple is Blaydes, Vieira, and Aspinall.
And for me, it's a double this week. I have to dial it back a bit. I've been going for the 4-1s for the last few weeks and missing on one every time. So for me, it's the Aspinall and Arlovsky fight not to go the distance, and the Phil Hawes and Imovov fight not to go the distance. That'll be very small odds, but I need to regain some of that money and get a win out at least.
We're only mid-February. We'll chip away little apples, Paul.
Very good, and thank you very much for tuning in, guys. We will be back next week.